Chapter 9, Lord Malthus emerges. The obsidian walls drank light like parched earth drinks rain, their surfaces carved with veins of violet energy that pulsed with the rhythm of a sleeping giant's breath. Each pulse cast writhing shadows across the throne room's cavernous space, where bound spirits whispered secrets that mortal ears were never meant to hear. The air itself seemed thick, tasting of copper pennies and grave earth, while necromantic flames danced without heat along braziers carved from human skulls. Lord Malthus Voidbringer descended the steps of his throne with predatory grace, each footfall echoing like a funeral bell in the vast chamber. His armor seemed to devour the violet light rather than reflect it, creating a walking void in the shape of a man. When his gaze swept across his assembled cultists, several involuntarily stepped back, not from his physical presence, but from something deeper that crawled beneath their skin like ice-cold fingers.
Rise.
The word carried harmonics that bypassed the ears entirely, resonating in chest cavities and bone marrow. 30 figures rose as one, their purple tabards rippling like dark water in the unstable light. Each face bore the peculiar mixture of exhilaration and terror that marked those who had chosen to serve something genuinely dangerous. Corvin stepped forward, his scarred features a map of violent encounters survived through skill and luck. The lieutenant's hand rested unconsciously on his weapon's hilt, a nervous habit that had kept him alive through months of brutal PvP combat.
My lord.
Corvin's voice carried careful respect, tinged with genuine unease.
Westmark is complete. No survivors. 30 characters deleted permanently.
Malthus's violet eyes flared brighter, and for a moment the bound spirits fell silent, as if even they feared to interrupt his satisfaction. He moved to the tactical display that shimmered above the throne, a three-dimensional map of Covenant's northern territories where settlements glowed like dying stars against the darkness.
Excellent.
His gauntleted finger traced routes between settlements, leaving brief trails of violet energy that lingered before fading.
But Westmark was merely practice.
The air above the throne rippled, and the map expanded to show a detailed view of the northern trading routes. Each settlement pulsed with information: population, estimates, defensive capabilities, strategic value. Malthus studied the display with the clinical attention of a surgeon, selecting where to make his first incision.
Thornwall.
His finger paused above a modest trading post nestled between forested hills.
Prosperous. Well defended. Complacent.
Several cultists leaned forward, their faces illuminated by the map's ghostly light. The settlement showed typical frontier defenses: wooden palisades reinforced with stone watchtowers at strategic intervals, a small but disciplined guard force. Mira, her necromancer's robes rustling like dry leaves, studied the tactical readout with professional interest.
Standard siege approach, my lord. Breach the walls, eliminate the defenders.
No.
Malthus's smile revealed teeth that seemed too sharp, too white in the uncertain light.
We make examples. Complete elimination. Nothing left but ash and a memory of screens.
His fingers danced across the display, highlighting weak points and approach vectors with disturbing intimacy. Each mark revealed knowledge that went far beyond casual observation. Someone had studied Thornwall's defenses with the attention of a predator, learning every detail of its prey's behavior. The map shifted focus, zooming out to reveal a larger settlement marked in golden light. The fortress town of Blackridge sprawled across a strategic hilltop, its walls thick stone rather than wood. its towers crowned with crystalline structures that caught and reflected light in patterns too regular to be natural.
Beyond Thornwall lies our true prize.
The name hung in the air like incense smoke, heavy with implication. Several cultists exchanged glances. Blackridge had a reputation even among Covenant's most dangerous players. Veterans. Organized resistance. The kind of settlement that had weathered storms that leveled lesser communities. Carvin's scarred face showed the careful neutrality of a man walking through a minefield.
That's ambitious, my lord. Blackridge has defenses most settlements lack. Players who've survived challenges that deleted entire guilds.
The violet flames in Malthus's eyes flickered, and for a heartbeat something else looked out from behind them. Something hungry and patient and utterly without mercy.
Resistance can be discouraged.
His voice carried undertones that made the bound spirits whisper more urgently.
Fear is more efficient than conquest. We shall teach them that nowhere is safe from my reach.
Corvin hesitated, something flickering across his battle-worn features like a bird's shadow crossing sunlit ground.
But, my lord, Blackridge has been our best source of recruits. Many of our finest fighters came from their ranks after witnessing our power firsthand.
The throne room fell into a silence so complete that the whisper of bound spirits sounded like screaming wind. Malthus's gauntleted fingers tightened against the obsidian armrest with a sound like breaking bones, and the violet veins in the walls pulsed faster, hungrier.
I'm aware.
Each word fell like a stone into still water, creating ripples of unease that spread through the assembled cultists.
Plans. Evolve.
He waved dismissively, the gesture cutting through the air like a blade through silk. The tactical displays shifted, showing attack timelines and resource allocations with mathematical precision.
Our approach will be systematic.
Malthus's voice regained its measured control, though something dangerous still flickered behind his violet gaze.
First, we eliminate the outer settlements. Cut their supply lines. Isolate them. Then, when fear has prepared the ground properly, we make our true intentions known.
The display showed phase markers, a campaign designed not just for territorial expansion, but for psychological warfare. Each attack calculated to maximize terror while maintaining the appearance of conventional conquest.
Questions?
The silence stretched taut as bowstring. His cultists understood their roles in the unfolding drama, instruments of will in a campaign that would reshape Covenant's northern territories, according to one man's twisted vision.
Then we begin.
Malthus ascended to his throne, the obsidian responding to his presence with hungry pulses of violet energy.
Corvin, take 20 fighters to Thornwall. Complete destruction. Buildings, defenses, population. Leave one survivor to carry tales of what they witnessed.
As his forces prepared to move, Malthus settled into his throne and smiled. Outside the fortress, storm clouds gathered with unnatural intensity, as if the very sky bent to accommodate the malevolent will housed within those light-devouring walls. The forest path clung to Vance's boots like grasping fingers, each step releasing the rich scent of lowland decay. Greeny car from the shadow beast he'd slain still dripped from Equilibrium's blade, hissing where it struck the earth. Through the canopy overhead, smoke painted the morning sky in shades of ash and warning. He emerged from the tree line to find Thornwall's ruins sprawled before him like a broken promise. The trading post that had bustled with life just days ago lay scattered across the hillside, splintered wood and shattered stone creating abstract patterns of destruction that spoke of systematic annihilation. Vance's enhanced reflexes cataloged details that painted a picture more disturbing than simple rating. Scorch marks formed precise geometric patterns across the settlement's central square. The defensive walls hadn't been battered down. They'd been surgically removed, carved away by forces that understood exactly where to strike for maximum effect.
Organized.
The word escaped him like a breath he'd been holding too long. He knelt beside char marks that suggested coordinated spell attacks, his fingers tracing burn patterns that showed multiple casters working in perfect synchronization. Elec approached through the drifting smoke, his usually cheerful demeanor replaced by grim attention to detail. Soot streaked his weathered features, and his hand rested unconsciously on his weapon's hilt.
They left one survivor.
His voice carried the hollow tone of someone who'd seen too much too quickly.
Keeps babbling about violet eyes and whispers that felt like ice walking through her bones.
Vance's hand found Equilibrium's hilt, the weapon's enhanced matrices responding to his tension with subtle warmth against his palm. The attack patterns showed intelligence that went beyond battlefield tactics. Someone with intimate knowledge of Covenant's systems had orchestrated this destruction.
Where?
Market Square. What's left of it?
They picked their way through debris that had once been homes and dreams. Broken pottery crunched beneath their boots, mixing with ash that might once have been furniture or lives. The destruction felt personal somehow, as if whoever ordered this attack had taken satisfaction in each building's collapse, each life erased from the server forever. Near the settlement's heart, they found her, an elderly NPC huddled beside the skeletal remains of what had been Thornwall's main trading post. Her clothes hung in tatters singed by fires that had burned with unnatural hunger. When she looked up at their approach, her eyes held trauma that seemed too genuine for standard programming.
They came from everywhere at once.
Her voice trembled like autumn leaves before a storm.
Dark armor that swallowed light, purple flames that burned cold. Their leader,
she shuddered, pulling tattered robes closer around shoulders that shook with more than just the morning chill.
What did he say?
Vance kept his voice gentle, but urgency pressed beneath the surface like a blade against silk.
that this was just the beginning.
The woman's gaze found his, and her voice dropped to barely above a whisper.
That nowhere would be safe from his reach. He mentioned Blackridge specifically. Said someone there would soon understand the price of defying him.
Vance and Alack exchanged glances loaded with implications neither wanted to voice. A target. Not random expansion, but something personal.
How many attackers?
30, maybe more. They moved like dancers who'd rehearsed their steps for months. No hesitation, no mercy.
The survivor's voice carried the hollow tone of someone who'd witnessed systematic slaughter.
Complete elimination. Everyone else. Gone.
Permateth.
The word echoed in Vance's thoughts like a funeral bell. 30 players deleted forever, their characters erased from existence with the finality of actual death. The psychological impact would ripple across every settlement in the Northern Territories.
We need to warn Black Ridge.
Ilack's usual optimism had been replaced by grim determination, his scarred hands already checking weapons and supplies. Vance moved toward the shattered remains of the watchtower, where stone had been melted rather than broken. Purple residue coated the edges where necromantic fire had carved through defensive positions with surgical precision.
Look at this burn pattern.
His voice carried the analytical detachment he'd learned in Death Runner. Emotion was luxury, observation was survival.
3 separate spells cast simultaneously. Perfect coordination.
Elak examined the eastern wall, where a gap 20 feet wide had been carved through stone that should have withstood normal siege weapons. The edges showed no sign of battering or conventional assault, just smooth cuts that spoke of forces operating beyond normal limitations.
This wasn't battered down. Someone knew exactly where the structural weakness lay hidden.
Vance's enhanced perception caught details others would miss. Scorch marks that formed deliberate patterns, debris scattered in ways that suggested the attackers had intimate knowledge of the settlement's layout. Near the market square, something made his blood run cold as mountain water.
Eli.
His friend joined him beside what had been Thornwall's supply depot. The building's foundation bore inscriptions that glowed with residual magical energy, symbols that pulsed in rhythm with an absent heartbeat, their violet light casting writhing shadows across the broken ground.
Binding runes.
Vance identified them with the same detached precision he'd once used to catalog Death Runner's deadly obstacles.
But look at the configuration.
The pattern twisted in ways that pushed beyond conventional magical practice. Standard necromantic bindings followed established geometries, but these symbols writhed with personal touches that suggested modification. Innovation that spoke of someone who understood the underlying principles well enough to improve upon them.
I've never seen anything like this.
Ilak's voice carried unease that went beyond professional concern.
Neither have I.
Vance studied the sigil's complex geometry, something tugging at the edges of his memory, like a half-remembered song.
But something about it seems familiar.
Near the broken gates, more rune patterns scarred the earth, summoning circles intertwined with binding configurations in ways that defied conventional magical theory. The design resembled a sigil of incredible complexity, its geometric forms pulsing with energy that felt hungry and patient and utterly without mercy.
Summoning runes integrated with binding circles?
Elek frowned, studying the configuration with growing unease.
That combination shouldn't be stable. The magical resonances would interfere with each other.
Unless someone found a way to make them harmonize.
Vance's voice carried grim certainty.
High-level necromancy. Beyond anything most players could achieve.
This whole thing feels like a demonstration.
Iled gestured at the systematic destruction surrounding them.
Complete overkill for a simple raid. Oh,
Warning shot.
Vance straightened, his gaze finding the smoke that still rose from various points throughout the ruins.
Someone wanted Blackridge to know what's coming.
A horse whinnied nearby. One of several mounts wandering through the ruins, their riders gone but the animals too well trained to flee entirely. Vance approached a sturdy brown mare, speaking softly, until she allowed him to take her reins. The animal's eyes showed the same trauma as the survivor, evidence that whatever had happened here had affected everything that witnessed it.
We ride for Blackridge.
He helped Elak catch a second horse, both men working with the efficiency of shared understanding.
Full speed.
They mounted and rode hard across countryside that suddenly felt filled with hidden threats. Behind them, smoke continued rising from Thornwall's ruins, a monument to systematic destruction that promised worse things to come. Evening painted Blackridge's walls in shades of gold and crimson as Vance and Elak approached the settlement's gates. The fortress town sprawled across its strategic hilltop like a crown of stone and crystal, its towers offering commanding views of the surrounding countryside. Guard positions that normally provided security through superior sight lines now felt like targets waiting for elimination.
Thornwall's gone.
Vance reported to Captain Aldrich the weathered NPCs who commanded Blackridge's defenses from a command post that overlooked the main gate.
Complete destruction. Professional assault.
Aldrich's features, carved by years of frontier warfare, tightened as he processed the implications. Torchlight flickered across his scarred face, highlighting eyes that had seen too many battles to dismiss any threat as unlikely.
Survivors,
1. She mentioned Blackridge specifically. This isn't random expansion. Someone's targeting us.
Word spread through the settlement with the speed that catastrophic news always traveled. Players gathered in the main square, their conversations creating a buzz of nervous energy as details of Thornwall's fate circulated through taverns and workshops. The usual evening bustle took on an edge of urgency as merchants secured valuable goods and fighters checked weapon conditions. From her tower's crystalline observation deck, Nire watched the growing crowd with mounting anxiety that twisted in her stomach like swallowed ice. The tower's mystical energies responded to her emotional state, casting shifting patterns of light across the chamber's walls. Thornwall's destruction meant more than strategic loss. It threatened the delicate independence she'd just started to build in Covenant.
If Blackridge falls, Neri disappears.
She thought, her hands unconsciously tightening on the crystalline windowsill until her knuckles showed white.
Back to nothing but Julian's contracts.
The prospect of returning to complete dependence on ascendancy sessions made her breath catch in her throat. She'd tasted freedom here, started building something valuable through her own skills rather than perform devotion. The thought of losing that now, of returning to Julian's possessive demands.
gather the council.
Captain Aldrich's voice carried across the courtyard, cutting through the growing murmur of concerned voices.
We need defensive strategies.
Within the hour, Blackridge's leadership assembled in the town hall, a sturdy building of stone and timber where a flickering torchlight cast dancing shadows across worn wooden tables. Veteran players who'd survived multiple campaigns sat beside NPCs with tactical knowledge, while crafters whose expertise had made the settlement prosperous studied maps with practical eyes. The atmosphere carried the weight of serious deliberation mixed with barely suppressed fear.
30 players eliminated.
Vance reported to the assembled group, his voice carrying the clinical detachment that made hard truths easier to process.
Professional coordination. Magical capabilities that suggest significant investment in necromancy.
Talon, a ranger whose leather armor bore the stains of countless wilderness expeditions, leaned forward across the council table. Candlelight flickered across his weathered features as he spoke.
I've heard rumors about someone calling himself Lord Malthus, building a cult in the northern wastes, promising power to players willing to serve.
His voice dropped lower, forcing the others to lean closer.
Reports say he's a necromancer of incredible power, abilities that don't seem to follow normal magical limitations. Cults form every month.
Jorik dismissed the concern with a gesture that made his sword's scabbard scrape against his chair. The warrior's scarred hands spoke of countless battles survived through skill and determination.
Most fall apart within weeks, when their leaders prove to be ordinary players with delusions of grandeur. This one's different.
Talon's insistence carried the weight of someone who'd seen evidence others hadn't.
Malthus is reported to have spells that break conventional rules. And players are disappearing, not dying, disappearing. Characters deleted without explanation.
The distinction carried ominous weight in Covenant's permanent consequences environment. Players might accept character death as the price of challenging gameplay, but systematic deletion suggested something operating beyond normal game mechanics. Captain Aldrich looked around the table at faces illuminated by uncertain candlelight.
What are our options?
Evacuation.
Elena, a healer whose practical nature balanced the warrior's aggressive instincts, spoke with the careful consideration of someone used to making life and death decisions.
Non-combat personnel could retreat to safer settlements. Preserve lives and resources.
Strategic withdrawal.
Agreed Marcus, a veteran tactician whose graying beard spoke of campaigns survived through careful planning.
Fall back to Ironhold or Westmere. Regroup with larger allied forces. And abandon everything we've built.
Jorik's scarred hands gripped his sword, hilt with white-knuckled intensity.
Let them burn our homes without a fight. Watch years of effort scattered like ash on the wind.
Better than watching our characters get deleted permanently.
Elena's counter carried the harsh pragmatism of someone who'd seen too many friends disappear from Covenant servers forever.
We can rebuild settlements. We can't resurrect the dead.
Captain Aldrich raised his hand for silence, the gesture cutting through rising tensions like a blade through silk.
Other options?
Bunker down.
Kira, a defensive specialist whose expertise had designed many of Blackridge's fortifications, studied the architectural plans spread across the table.
Shore up the walls. Stockpile supplies. Weather whatever storm comes our way.
Blind preparation.
Vance observed, his analytical mind cutting to the heart of their dilemma.
Fighting an enemy we don't understand with capabilities we can't predict.
The room fell quiet as the weight of their ignorance settled like dust after an explosion. They were planning defenses against abilities that defied normal magical practice, organizing responses to threats they couldn't properly assess.
We need information.
Vance continued, his voice carrying the certainty of someone who'd learned that knowledge was the difference between survival and deletion.
Scouting parties. Learn what we're actually facing before we commit to any defensive strategy.
Talon nodded immediately, his ranger's instincts responding to the logic.
I can take a team north. Map their positions. Count their forces. Assess their magical capabilities. I'll lead scouts east.
Marcus's tactical mind was already planning routes and contingencies.
Check the trade routes. See how far their influence extends.
And I'll coordinate with settlements to the west.
Elena's healing background made her ideal for diplomatic missions.
See who else might stand with us if this develops into a wider conflict.
Captain Aldrich studied the faces around the table. Fighters and thinkers, veterans and crafters, all bound together by investment in Blackridge's survival.
Those who stay begin siege preparations. Food, water, weapons. Assume we'll be cut off for weeks.
Vance felt something settle in his chest. The familiar weight of calculated risk that had kept him alive through Deathrunner's worst challenges. The mathematics of survival, where every decision carried the potential for permanent consequence.
Information first.
He thought, his gaze finding the crystalline tower that rose above Blackridge's rooftops like a beacon against the darkening sky.
Then preparation. Then whatever comes.
As night settled over the settlement, players dispersed to their assigned tasks with the purposeful efficiency of people who understood the stakes. Scout teams gathered supplies, while others began the methodical work of transforming Blackridge into a fortress. The atmosphere carried determined resolve mixed with the knowledge that dawn might bring challenges that would test everything they'd built. From her tower, Nere watched the defensive preparations with growing determination that burned away her earlier anxiety. Her role depended entirely on Blackridge's survival, but more than that, this place had become home in ways that Julian's fantasy worlds never could be.
I won't run again.
She decided, her hands glowing with mystical energy as she began preparing defenses of her own.
Whatever comes, I face it here.
The wind shifted, carrying hints of distant smoke and something darker, the scent of approaching storms, both meteorological and metaphorical. Somewhere in the northern darkness, forces were moving that would soon test whether Blackridge's walls could contain the fury of organized destruction. Dawn would bring scouts and answers. Until then, they prepared for siege, knowing that Thornwall's fate might soon become their own, unless they could find ways to counter threats that seemed to operate beyond the normal limitations of both magic and mortality. Chapter 10, Empty Roads. The eastern gate's archway stood silent as a tomb, its weathered stone frame empty of the riot of color and sound that should have greeted dawn. Elara's bare feet whispered against the rampart's cold granite as she traced divination patterns along its ancient edge, her silver robes catching the wan morning light like captured moonbeams. The fabric rippled with each gesture, its ethereal shimmer a stark contrast to the harsh reality sprawling below. The trade roads carved through rolling hills like scars across verdant flesh, their packed earth surfaces gleaming with morning dew. Weathered stone markers jutted from the roadside at precise intervals, each one carved with merchant symbols and distance runes that had guided caravans for generations. But now they stood sentinel over emptiness, their shadows stretching like grasping fingers toward a horizon that should have blazed with painted wagon canopies and jangling harness bells.
Something's wrong with the timing.
The thought struck her as her fingertips grew numb from the morning chill. Dawn's Edge caravan should have crested the third hill by now, their bright yellow and crimson wagons visible for miles against the weathered gray stone. The Prosperity Guild never missed their schedule. Their brass bells chimed the distances like clockwork, announcing their approach with musical precision that Blackridge's merchants could set their chronometers by. Instead, silence stretched across the valley like a held breath.
Mistress?
The voice startled her from her observations. Footsteps echoed up the spiral staircase, quick, nervous taps against worn stone that spoke of barely contained anxiety. The tower's youngest attendant emerged into the morning light, her apprentice robes rumpled from sleep, and her breathing quick with exertion from the climb. Elara turned from the rampart, her divination patterns dissolving into wisps of silver light. The girl's face bore the flush of running, her dark hair escaping its practical braid to frame worried features. Below them, Blackridge's market corridor stretched like a broken smile. Half the stalls stood empty, their canvas awnings flapping listlessly in the morning breeze. Vendors who should have been arranging displays of rare components instead clustered in tight knots, their voices carrying upward on the still air in worried whispers.
The other merchants?
The apprentice continued, wringing her hands.
They're asking about their orders. The crystal and dust shipment, the Phoenix Down bundles. Master Corvain says he's got commissions he can't fill without the Eastern route supplies.
Ilara's hand paused mid-gesture, silver threads of magic dissipating between her fingers like morning mist. Below she could see the merchant clusters, wool-wrapped figures gesturing toward empty roads, their body language speaking of barely contained frustration. Master Corvain's bulk dominated one group, his massive arms crossed as he pointed toward the silent eastern gate.
Tell them? Tell them what? That someone knows exactly which caravans bring my materials. That this feels like surgical precision rather than random misfortune?
The half-formed divination patterns wavered under her uncertainty, their silver glow flickering like dying stars.
Tell them, the morning brings clarity to all mysteries.
The attendant bobbed her head and vanished back down the stairs, her footsteps fading into the tower's depths. Elara found herself alone again, surrounded by the crystal barrier that crowned her sanctum. She pressed her palms against the translucent surface, feeling the structure's harmonic vibration through her bones, a deep thrumming that resonated with frustrated energy, like a tuning fork struck, but unable to find its proper note.
Focus. Channel the anxiety into purpose.
Her magic reached outward, seeking glimpses across distance and probability. The spell tasted of morning mist and metallic uncertainty as it spread across the valley, touching empty roads and silent stones. Fragments of vision flickered behind her closed eyelids. Overturned wagons scattered across shallow valleys like broken toys. Horses scattered to the four winds with their traces cut clean. Cargo spilled across muddy ground in deliberate patterns. But no bodies. No blood staining the earth. The attacks were surgical, targeted. Someone wanted disruption without slaughter, isolation without massacre. The precision spoke of intelligence and planning that made her skin crawl with recognition. Movement in the courtyard below caught her peripheral vision. Between the ancient oaks that had witnessed decades of honest commerce, a familiar figure moved with predatory grace. The Blood Templar's crimson-tinged armor caught dappled sunlight filtering through the canopy, each plate singing with barely audible harmonic resonance. His massive greatsword rode his spine like a promise of violence, its wrapped hilt worn smooth by countless battles. He moved through the nervous crowd with purpose that parted bodies before him, his presence somehow steadying the anxious energy that rippled through Blackridge's morning routines. Players and NPCs alike stepped aside, not from fear but from recognition. Here walked someone who understood the mathematics of survival in ways most never would. Their eyes met across the vertical distance. No words passed between tower and courtyard, but something settled in her chest. The recognition that she wasn't watching this dissolution alone. His gaze held steady assessment without judgment, tactical evaluation without condemnation. She touched her fingers to her lips, then gestured toward the empty roads.
Something hunts us.
His response came as the faintest nod, barely visible except to someone trained to read communication in life or death silence.
I know. I'll find answers.
Vance counted the missing caravans with Deathrunner precision, his eyes tracking empty roads like a predator calculating kill zones. 3 major trade routes converged on Blackridge's gates. 4 scheduled arrivals should have materialized by dawn. 0 wagons crested the horizon. The mathematics of siege warfare, dressed in economic strangulation. His armor creaked softly as he shifted weight, the familiar sound of metal against leather, a comfort in the growing uncertainty. Around him, the courtyard buzzed with nervous energy, vendors adjusting empty displays with shaking hands, players clustering near message boards with voices pitched just below panic. The morning air carried scents of wood smoke and brewing tea, normal sounds and smells that felt false against the backdrop of systematic disruption.
Still no word from the southern pass.
Gareth muttered, his ranger's fingers dancing across his bowstring for the third time in as many minutes. The nervous habit spoke louder than his casual tone, leather creaking against yew wood in rhythmic tension.
Maybe weather delayed them. Early snow in the mountain passes.
No.
Vance's voice cut through the speculation like a blade through silk. He tilted his head skyward, studying the clear expanse that stretched from horizon to horizon without a single cloud. The air tasted clean and crisp, carrying no hint of storm or seasonal disruption.
Systematic.
The word fell into the gathering crowd like a stone into still water, sending ripples of unease through the assembled players. Around them, Blackridge's morning market struggled to maintain normalcy, empty stalls creating pockets of shadow between buildings, darkness that seemed to harbor more threat than geography should justify. The half-empty displays looked like broken teeth in a skull's grin.
Someone's learning our patterns.
The thought carried echoes of underground betting halls where information meant the difference between walking away, wealthy, or being carried away in pieces. In Deathrunner, the smart money always knew which routes would be blocked, which paths would become kill zones designed to maximize entertainment value. This felt familiar, the patient dismantling of resources before the final devastating strike. He stepped forward, armor plates singing against each other in metallic harmony.
Form up.
He said, his words carrying across the courtyard without need for raised volume. Players attuned to Covenant's lethal nature heard certainty when it spoke, and conversations died into expectant silence.
Reconnaissance. Southern Pass.
Think this is connected to Malthus hitting the trade post yesterday?
Elena asked, her mage robes rustling like autumn leaves as she stepped from the crowd. Blue fabric embroidered with silver runes caught the morning light, but her fingers trembled slightly as they traced protective wards in the air.
Maybe he's expanding his operational radius.
Vance's hand found Equilibrium's hilt, the massive greatsword's familiar weight, reassuring against his spine. The weapon's wrapped grip fit his palm like an extension of his own bone and muscle, leather worn smooth by countless battles and close calls.
One caravan could be bandits. Coincidence.
He shook his head slowly, feeling vertebrae crack with the motion.
All of them? This is systematic. This is war. And I know how to survive what others can't.
The blade's familiar balance spoke of countless edge-walking moments, decisions measured in milliseconds between life and permanent deletion. Other players approached death as failure to be avoided at all costs. He approached it as a resource to be managed, a tool to be wielded with surgical precision.
I'll take volunteers.
He continued scanning the gathering crowd with tactical assessment.
No obligations. Permadeath rules apply.
The words hung in the morning air, like smoke carrying weight that separated true commitment from casual heroism. In Covenant, death meant deletion, permanent exile from a world that had consumed months or years of investment. The mathematics were brutal and absolute. Gareth stepped forward immediately, his ranger's bow singing with tension as he adjusted the string one final time.
Signed up for this when I picked the server.
Elena followed despite the protective wards still flickering around her fingers, blue light dancing across her knuckles like captured lightning.
Someone needs to watch your backs.
Marcus the shield-bearer nodded once, his massive frame adding stability to their formation. The giant's shield bore scars from dozens of encounters, its surface telling stories of calculated risks and narrow survivals. Others hesitated, weighing character investment against community need. Months of progress against moral obligation.
Good. Better 5 committed than 15 reluctant.
The weight of decision settled over the gathered volunteers like morning mist, heavy with possibility and consequence. Covenant's permadeath mechanics transformed reconnaissance from routine scouting into potential character suicide. But uncertainty bred worse fears than truth, and Blackridge's slow strangulation served someone's dark purpose. Above them, movement at the tower's crystalline peak drew his attention. Nairi stood framed by translucent barriers and morning light, her silver robes flowing in the gentle breeze like liquid starlight. Even at this distance, he could read the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands traced frustrated divination patterns that spoke of magic, reaching for answers that danced just beyond grasp. Their eyes met across the vertical distance. Something passed between them, not words or gestures, but recognition deeper than speech. She understood the necessity of action, even when action meant embracing risk that others wouldn't dare contemplate. He touched 2 fingers to his heart in ancient salute, then pointed toward the southern horizon where morning mist clung to distant hills.
I see the pattern. I'll find answers.
Her response came as the faintest nod, almost invisible except to someone trained to read micro-expressions in life-or-death moments. Her fingers touched her lips, then gestured toward the empty roads.
Be careful. Someone wants this isolation.
Time to discover whose game they were playing and what rules govern survival. Security incident resolved. Cleared for continued contracting in ascendancy. The message floated in Elara's peripheral vision like a prison sentence, glowing soft blue against the immersion pod's sterile interior. Haptic sensors engaged with gentle hums, their microscopic contacts adhering to her skin with warm precision. The neural interface crown descended with mechanical grace, its weight familiar as chains around her thoughts. The stravia materialized around her in layers of impossible beauty, crystalline spires that sang with harmonic resonance, their surfaces reflecting light that had never known earthly sun. Bridges of solidified starlight spanned distances that defied physics, their translucent spans humming with celestial energy. The very air tasted of magic and ancient power, thick with potential that made her lungs work harder to process each breath. But today's location felt different. Wrong. The chamber Julian had commissioned existed as architecture designed for violation. Mirrors lined every surface from floor to vaulted ceiling, their reflective depths showing not physical forms but desires made manifest. Ethereal light flowed like liquid silk through fixtures that belonged more in a courtesan's boudoir than a sacred space, casting shadows that moved independently of their sources. The air itself felt thick with manufactured significance, heavy with Julian's coded intentions that made her skin crawl with recognition. Premium haptic feedback translated every sensation with crystal clarity. The warmth of magical energy against her flesh, the whisper of silk robes against hypersensitive skin, the subtle vibration of power that hummed through the chamber's foundations.
My radiant seer.
Azrael's voice carried possessive warmth as he materialized beside her, his obsidian armor gleaming with violet energy lines that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. The armor fit him like a second skin, each plate designed to emphasize the powerful frame beneath, while the energy lines drew attention to areas that made her stomach clench with understanding. Something in his stance spoke of predatory anticipation, the way he held his shoulders, the slight forward lean of his torso, the manner his gauntleted hands flexed at his sides like a cat testing its claws.
Are you prepared for the Mirror of Souls?
Elara's stomach twisted even as Ria's expression remained serenely mystical. Her face a mask of ethereal devotion that she'd perfected through months of practice.
Another boundary. Another test of how far I'll bend before breaking.
She let confusion color her voice exactly as Ria would express it. Naive uncertainty wrapped in ethereal grace.
What kind of trial is this, my lord?
A test of your faith.
Azrael gestured toward the chamber's centerpiece, a mirror of impossible clarity that dominated the space like an altar. Its surface showed no reflections yet, instead displaying swirling depths that seemed to beckon with hypnotic allure.
The ancient texts speak of sacrifices required to save our world. How far will you go to ensure our victory against the darkness?
Ancient texts he wrote yesterday.
But Ria simply nodded with trusting devotion, her silver robes rustling like whispered prayers as she approached the mirror's surface. Each step echoed in the chamber with crystalline clarity, the sound bouncing between mirror surfaces until it became a chorus of footfalls. The reflection that met her gaze moved independently of her approach, reaching forward with beckoning hands that pressed against the mirror's surface from within. The figure wore gossamer threads that barely preserved modesty, the cosmic forces Julian had coded into the scenario, designed to strip away protection one layer at a time.
You understand what's required.
Azrael's voice carried barely restrained hunger, his breathing audible through his armor's ventilation systems.
Perfect unity. Intimate contact? Watching while I violate myself for his entertainment.
The haptic feedback translated every sensation as she pressed closer to the mirror, glass that yielded like warm flesh beneath her fingertips, surface tension that parted like water around her touch. Her reflection smiled with lips that would taste of sweet magical energy and bitter surrender, each detail rendered with premium clarity that made the violation impossible to ignore.
The celestial harmonies guide me.
Ria whispered, because that's what mystical seers said when they didn't understand the mechanics they were navigating, when magic was mystery rather than system. Her reflection leaned forward, and their lips met through the mirror's yielding surface. The kiss sent ripples through the glass like dropping stones into still water, barriers dissolving between reflection and reality in waves that Azrael watched with satisfaction that made her skin crawl. The wet sound of mouth against enchanted glass filled the chamber, obscene in its clarity, amplified by the mirror surfaces until the echoes surrounded them from every angle. Each contact sent tremors through the magical construct, her reflection's hands roaming with increasing boldness while she followed Julian's carefully crafted script.
Dissociate. Perform. Survive.
The mantra became rhythm as she guided Ria through the violation. Each gesture cataloged for future protection or eventual confrontation. Premium sensors translated every sensation, the taste of ethereal energy, the whisper of gossamer against hypersensitive skin, the humming vibration of power that pulsed through the mirror's surface. The trial's conclusion brought Azrael close enough that she could smell his virtual breath, honey and starlight, hiding something that tasted of possession and control. His gauntleted hand brushed her cheek with proprietary intimacy, metal warm against her flushed skin.
Perfect harmony.
He murmured, his voice a rumble that she felt through the haptic connections.
Soon, my seer, nothing will separate our joint destiny.
The session's end couldn't come fast enough. Vestrathia's ethereal light faded into sterile reality as Elara disconnected from the neural interface, virtual intimacy lingering like poison on her tongue. The immersion pod's interior felt like a coffin after the magical realm's impossible vistas, cramped, gray, and suffused with the antiseptic smell of sterilization protocols. Her hands shook as she stripped away the haptic sensors, each contact point leaving small red marks on her skin where they'd adhered with medical precision. The neural crown lifted with pneumatic hiss, its weight suddenly absent from her skull in a way that left her feeling unmoored. In 12 hours, she'd returned to Covenant as Nuri, seeking clean magic and honest interaction in a world where death carried consequences, but life retained meaning. But Julian's web was tightening with each session, each scenario more invasive than the last, testing boundaries with the patience of a predator confident in its ultimate victory.
How much longer before I break?
The question followed her into the gray morning light filtering through the pod's small window, where Micah waited in their shared space with questions she couldn't answer and hopes she could barely sustain. The real world smelled of sustainment and recycled air, tasted of defeat and diminished possibilities. But somewhere in that gray reality, Vance was moving toward answers she desperately needed, carrying the promise that not all battles ended in surrender.